Good Minister, I want to ask you if you accept that there continues to be high levels of vacancy and dereliction in many local authority areas around this state. But in particular, I want to raise my own area, County Offaly. I know that the local authority there is grappling with derelict and vacant buildings. And I do acknowledge at the outset that €2 million funding was provided under the Urban Regeneration Development Fund. But what I would really like looked at is if additional funding could be provided. It's my understanding that under the Rural Regeneration Fund, which is also in place, that there was €1 billion provided between 2019 and 2027. What I would like to see is increased funding in County Offaly to tackle this problem of dereliction.
And thank you, Deputy Nolan. The Town Centre First policy is a major cross-government policy that recognises vacancy and dereliction and that are still a challenge in many rural towns and villages. It seeks to breathe new life into our town centre, supporting the Our Rural Future vision for a thriving rural Ireland. Central to Town Centre First is a range of support funding that we have in place, including my department's Rural Regeneration and Development Fund and the Town and Village Renewal Scheme. In 2023, the Town and Village Renewal Scheme placed a particular emphasis on enhancing economic and social vibrancy, along with a focus on vacancy and dereliction. In April, I was delighted to announce €20.4 million in funding for 82 successful projects under the scheme. The full list of successful projects is on my department's website and includes a number of projects aimed at developing community facilities in vacant or derelict properties. In May, I announced €164 million under the Rural Regeneration Development Fund for 30 projects right across the country. This fund is having a demonstrably positive impact on addressing dereliction, in particular when it comes to heritage buildings in rural towns, and this year's successful applications again included a range of imaginative and innovative approaches to the use of derelict and vacant properties. Furthermore, over the last 2 years, I've also rolled out the Buildings Acquisition Measure to support local authorities in purchasing vacant and derelict buildings for future development for community purposes. This measure has seen the purchase of disused Garda stations, banks, cinemas, parish halls and schools for the redevelopment as community facilities. To support the rollout of the Town Centre First policy, my department is also funding town regeneration officers in rural local authorities. These officers are engaging directly with local communities in addressing how they can best progress the development of their towns and villages, including in addressing the challenges of vacancy and dereliction. I've seen at first hand the impact that vacancy and dereliction can have on our rural towns and villages, and I remain absolutely committed to addressing these issues and to making rural areas better places to work, live, invest, raise a family and visit.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Nolan.
Good Minister, I do acknowledge certainly that these schemes are very, very positive, and that's why I'm saying here, and I acknowledge fully that it does bring about improvements. Of course it does, if towns and villages are lucky to avail of the funding through the application which comes from the local authority. So they're very positive, and that's the very reason why I'm asking for increased funding to be given to our local authority in Offaly County Council. And I do want to acknowledge the work of Offaly County Council's regeneration team, along with, as you said, the regeneration officers that have been funded. It's a brilliant idea. I feel that it's very practical, and it's something that hopefully will make a difference in counties like my own. I know that the Council's regeneration team in County Offaly has been very proactive in issuing notices to property owners. As I understand it, if the regeneration team doesn't receive a reply, then the property is placed on the derelict sites register, which means that the owner will incur an annual tax, and eventually the Council might then issue a compulsory purchase order. But I do feel also that the focus should be in the area of preventing dereliction and vacancy from ever arising. And to that, we need to make sure that we have a fully coordinated approach. And just yesterday, I and my colleagues raised the issue of 13.5% VAT rate that is crippling many small businesses, including restaurants and cafes. And we could certainly avoid many vacant properties arising if we did more to prevent them from going out of business. And that's why I feel that we need a coordinated coordinated approach across departments, increased funding, and for schemes to be less bureaucratic.
Minister.
Thank you. Well, just to say, we have appointed town regeneration officers in every county in the country, so they will engage with the communities and with obviously with landowners who have derelict properties that's nothing happening to. Now, you and I well know there's a myriad of different reasons why properties are left derelict, and I often go into a town and say, why on earth is there nobody living in those houses? But there's probably a story behind it, and it's quite complex. It's often to do with inheritance. There's a load of things happening, but look, there's a lot of work being done on it, and I know that Minister O'Brien in his department has the Creek Conaha grant, and there's the Living City initiative. We have a number of social housing programmes, so the Social Housing Investment Programme, the Capital Assistance Scheme. Local authorities and approved housing bodies are tackling vacancy and dereliction through the repurposing, renewing of vacant buildings as new social homes. I saw that in my own town in Clones. It'd do you good to see, go down a street that was full of dereliction. People are now coming back and living in those towns, and it is very positive. I'll come back to you with the rest of it.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Nolan.
Good. Minister, I thank you for your reply, and I suppose just to reiterate my point, I do feel that this could work better and be even more effective than it currently is if there was a coordinated approach, such as, you know, also ensuring businesses stay in place and that they are thriving and that, you know, supported to a greater extent. And to that, I suppose to that end, I do hope that the government will take on board the need to cut the VAT rate to 9% to keep some of those businesses in place in our streets and where they're needed in our villages and rural towns. But we have the same issue with dereliction, as you pointed out, with empty houses. And yes, there are a multitude of reasons why they remain empty. As I understand it, currently only 6 properties in Offaly have received funding under the Vacant Property Refurbishment Grant Initiative. But we also know from the Irish Independent that just 127 property refurbishment grants have been drawn down by homeowners since the scheme came into effect. And that's about 1 in 50 of the 6,300 applications that have been made so far, with just over half, 3,274, actually approved since the scheme was launched in July 2022. And this does certainly demonstrate the scale of the problem. I feel that, you know, if there's a low uptake in a scheme, then obviously the scheme needs to be looked at, reviewed and tweaked and improved. And I would hope that that would happen in terms of the derelict housing, that could certainly reduce the numbers of derelict houses that we're seeing in our towns and villages. And I want to see my own county, Offaly, thrive, and for no house to be left vacant or derelict, particularly in the middle of a housing crisis. So I do feel that we could look at measures, and coordination, I feel, is key.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, to conclude.
Thank you. And there is coordination, and it's been done through the town centre or the town regeneration officers. So different, that's their job, to work together with the different through the local authority and identify funding schemes. And you haven't been doing too badly in Offaly. And I do remember being up in wait, let's see where it was now. I should remember, but it's the supermarket. Where's that one in? It's in. I visited Edenderry. And guess what? You got 12.25 million in funding for that. That's a wonderful project. Visited myself. It's an old supermarket. It's been transformed, and indeed there's other funding was provided there as well for different initiatives. So I've been to Offaly on a couple of occasions. I would say in terms of your funding, good applications always get funding. And I know that there's a remote working hub in Killilea. It got 250,000, 300,000 support the purchase of former school retail unit in Clara to develop a multi-purpose community space. So there's a lot happening out there, and if some town's not getting the funding, you need to talk to your local authority. They need to engage with them. They need to get an application in to my department, because in fairness, we have been supporting towns and villages the length and breadth of this country, and to do your heart good when you go in. And I don't know how the project is and how it's on in Edenderry, but I'm looking forward to go back to clipping the ribbon on it, because I'm sure it must be near finished at this stage. You'd know better than me, Deputy Nolan, where it's at, but there's a lot of investment. And by the way, there was a suite of business supports for small businesses, and I do understand the challenges they face, but when I heard the man on the radio this morning from An Post telling us about the number of online shopping, they've got to get online, and we have to change the way we do business, and so there's a lot more you see, the centre of our towns are changing because there's a lot more people going online to shop, and we know that. Well, not so much for me now, but I can see my daughters. There's always boxes appearing.
Sir Margaret there.